Helena was a 32-year-old theater actress living a quiet life in a small town. Her passion for the stage kept her alive, despite the modest struggles of a career filled with uncertainty. That afternoon, she was at the local municipal theater for the final rehearsal of the play set to premiere in just a few days, a dream on the verge of coming true. The sharp scent of aged wood mixed with the faint aroma of coffee drifting from the backstage cafe, creating a familiar, almost comforting atmosphere. Helena felt a nervous excitement simmering beneath the surface as her fellow actors practiced their lines. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until a subtle vibration pulsed beneath the theater's wooden floor. It was barely noticeable, but Helena shivered as a chill ran down her spine. She tried to focus on the script, but something felt wrong. A shadow flickered through the empty audience seats, where only silence and dust should have reigned. The slow, deliberate ticking of an old clock echoed through the space, each second stretching unnaturally long, as if time itself had warped. Helena blinked, and for a brief moment, the entire theater vanished. She saw it, not a dream, not a hallucination, but a vivid, terrifying vision, the empty seats bursting into flames, bright tongues of fire swallowing everything in the auditorium. The ceiling groaned and started to collapse, crushing the stage and the actors beneath it. Thick black smoke curled into every corner, muffling screams that were never truly heard, trapped in a haunting silence. Her heart pounded so fiercely it felt like it might burst, and she knew, with terrifying certainty, this was no ordinary warning, it was a premonition. Then, with a gasp, she jolted awake back in the rehearsal room. Her colleagues' voices sounded distant and muffled, almost unreal. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her hands trembled as she desperately tried to warn the theater's management. She pleaded for them to postpone the premiere due to spiritual reasons, fully aware it might sound insane. But no one believed her. The heavy weight of dread pressed down on her chest, growing thicker with each passing moment. Helena glanced over her shoulder again and again, feeling eyes watching her from shadows no one else seemed to see. It was as if the play's script had become a deadly prophecy, and her name was already crossed out in blood-red ink. Helena couldn't shake the heavy weight of the vision that haunted her. Days after the rehearsal, her mind replayed the image of the theater engulfed in flames, the roof collapsing, and the agonized silence that followed. The premonition was so vivid that every creak in the old building made her jump. She was convinced that something terrible was going to happen, but no one else seemed to notice, or care. On the morning of the final rehearsal, a sudden accident provided her an unexpected escape. The bus carrying the cast to the theater was involved in a minor crash. Fortunately, Helena and a handful of her colleagues walked away shaken but unharmed. As they gathered on the roadside, shaken and bewildered, some tried to laugh it off, calling it just bad luck. Helena, however, couldn't stop thinking about the fire, the roof falling, and the empty seats. Among the survivors were Marcus, the confident lead actor with a reputation for skepticism. Sophia, a young actress with a nervous smile and a secret fear of failure, and Daniel, the stage manager who carried the weight of the production on his shoulders. Each of them reacted differently to the accident. Marcus cracked jokes to lighten the mood, Sophia trembled quietly, and Daniel tried to calm everyone down while checking his phone for updates. As news of the crash spread, the media soon picked up on the story. A local reporter interviewed the survivors, capturing their confusion and relief. The newspaper headlines the next day described the miraculous escape of the theater troupe from a devastating accident. Yet, the irony was that none of the actors spoke about Helena's disturbing vision, only the accident itself. The press painted the event as a near tragedy narrowly avoided. But Helena's mind wasn't at ease. She began to feel watched, as if unseen eyes followed her every move. Shadows seemed to linger longer, whispers brushed past her ears in empty hallways, and an oppressive silence fell over her nights. The once comforting theater had turned into a place of dread. She started noticing small signs, doors creaking open by themselves, fleeting glimpses of movement in the corner of her eye. Despite the reassurances of her friends, Helena's paranoia grew. She questioned her own sanity, wondering if the accident was a sign she should leave the theater altogether. But deep down, she feared the real danger hadn't passed. Her intuition screamed that the premonition was not just a nightmare but a prophecy unfolding in real time. Then, the rumors began. Whispers circulated among the troupe that the accident was no coincidence, that something else was at play, something unseen, something waiting in the wings. Helena felt the weight of an invisible script tightening around her throat, and the names written in that ancient, tattered script began to haunt her thoughts. Was it possible that the tragedy she foresaw was following a script no one else could read? With every passing hour, the line between reality and the nightmare blurred. Helena's frantic thoughts collided with the skeptical voices around her. Marcus scoffed at the idea of fate or curses. "It's just a string of bad luck," he said. But Helena saw the fear behind his forced bravado. The media spotlight intensified, showing the public images of the survivors, the crash site, and the quiet town rattled by the near miss. Yet, in the shadows of this growing attention, Helena felt an ominous silence waiting to burst. The theater's once familiar walls now echoed with a sinister promise. The show was far from over, and the final act would be darker than any of them could imagine. The morning after the accident, the cast gathered again at the theater, trying to regain a sense of normalcy. Helena watched Marcus with growing unease. Despite his bravado, his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, a crack in the armor of his cynicism. Sophia stayed close to Helena, her nervous energy barely contained, while Daniel busily checked logistics, clearly trying to keep the production afloat. Then, the first shock hit like a blow to the chest. Marcus was found dead. The police called it a tragic accident. He had slipped in his apartment, falling down a flight of stairs. But Helena knew better. The scene seemed strangely staged, an overturned chair, a broken vase, and Marcus's phone lying cracked on the floor, still displaying the last message he had received, a cryptic warning from an unknown number. Helena felt the blood drain from her face as the horrifying realization dawned. The deaths were following the order of the script she had seen in the ancient pages. Marcus's name was crossed out in the same harsh red ink. Her heart pounded, echoing the rhythm of a death knell. Trying to hold herself together, Helena approached Sophia, whose pale face mirrored the terror creeping into her own soul. "It's happening," Helena whispered, voice barely audible. "The deaths, they're real. And they're coming for us." Daniel, skeptical as ever, dismissed Helena's fears. "It's coincidence," he argued. "People slip and fall all the time. You're letting paranoia get the better of you." But even as he spoke, his hands trembled, betraying his calm facade. The troupe was shattered. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed in Helena's vision, others clung to reason. The theater felt suffocating, every shadow a potential threat. Helena's mind raced, connecting the dots, the premonition, the accident, Marcus's death. The pattern was unmistakable, terrifying. Helena's insomnia worsened. She replayed the sequence of events repeatedly, searching for clues to break the deadly cycle. The clock ticked louder in the silence of her apartment, each second a reminder of the time slipping away. As Helena struggled to warn the others, she felt the weight of helplessness crushing her. The theater, once a sanctuary, had become a cage where death played director. And the final act was yet to come. Helena sat alone in her dimly lit apartment, the faded script clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The flickering candle cast dancing shadows on the walls, mirroring the storm of fear inside her. Every name crossed out in red ink was a promise of doom. She painstakingly pieced together the timeline. Marcus had been first, and the next was already marked. She tried to warn Sophia and Daniel, her voice strained but urgent. "It's not random. There's an order, a pattern. We have to face it, not run from it." Sophia nodded, eyes wide with terror, but Daniel remained unconvinced. "Helena, we're all under stress. You're seeing things that aren't there. This is just coincidence." The tension thickened like a heavy fog over their rehearsals. Helena's paranoia grew as she noticed subtle signs: a door left slightly ajar, whispers that stopped when she turned her head, the echo of footsteps in empty corridors. She felt eyes on her back, unseen but suffocating. One evening, despite Helena's desperate warnings, Daniel stayed behind to finish some paperwork. When the others left, a chilling scream shattered the silence. Helena and Sophia rushed back, only to find Daniel lifeless, tangled in the ropes used for stage curtains. The official story was a tragic accident, a misstep during stage setup, but Helena saw the unmistakable mark of the script's cruel hand. As the deaths mounted, the remaining actors frayed at the edges, caught between disbelief and terror. Helena's sense of urgency became a crushing burden. Each name crossed out in the script echoed in her mind like a death toll. She realized the cruel truth: no matter what they did, the script dictated their fate, and death was a relentless director, refusing to be fooled. Helena knew they couldn't wait passively for the script to claim another victim. The ancient, brittle pages in her hands were no longer just a cursed relic, they were the only clue to survive. She gathered Sophia and a small group of the remaining cast in a cramped, dim room backstage, the air thick with desperation and fear. "We have to find the pattern," Helena urged, voice steady despite the panic swelling inside her. "Look through every news article, every accident report. Anything similar that could tell us how this ends." The group scoured newspapers, online archives, and local records. They unearthed stories of mysterious deaths linked to past productions, bizarre accidents that mirrored their own nightmare. It was as if the curse had gripped this town's theater for generations, a vicious cycle repeating itself in silence. Hope flickered when Sophia suggested they might break the chain by altering the script's order. "If we switch roles or skip our parts, maybe we can confuse fate." Tentatively, they tried. Helena took Sophia's lead and swapped their characters for the next rehearsal. For a fleeting moment, the looming dread seemed to loosen its grip, and the air felt less suffocating. But the reprieve was cruelly short-lived. Another name was crossed out overnight, Daniel, whose death had shaken them all, but the script didn't stop there. The next victim was inevitable, and panic spiraled. Helena's eyes burned with exhaustion and determination. Time was slipping through their fingers like ash. Every moment counted in this deadly game of survival. They raced against an invisible force, one that knew their every move, a death that followed a script more merciless than any playwright. Only Helena and Sophia remained, their faces drawn and eyes hollow from sleepless nights haunted by shadows of the past. The theater felt like a tomb, silent except for the distant echoes of forgotten rehearsals. Every creak of wood, every whisper of air felt like a warning. Helena clutched the script to her chest, the red crosses mocking her resolve. "This ends tonight," she vowed, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We have one chance." Together, they devised a final, desperate plan. If the script dictated the order, then they would rewrite the ending. Helena would skip her role entirely, disappearing from the stage, breaking the sequence once and for all. The night of the rehearsal arrived. The empty theater swelled with an eerie silence, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Helena hid in the shadows backstage, heart pounding like a war drum, while Sophia went on stage, her every step trembling with fear. Minutes dragged, the silence unbroken. Until suddenly, a distant crash shattered the stillness. Sophia screamed, a sound that ripped through the heavy air. Helena rushed out, but found the stage empty. Sophia had vanished without a trace. Breathless, Helena realized the truth: the cycle had not been broken. Death was no fool, it adapted, it waited. The curtain fell on the last act, but the final scene was not theirs to write. Helena survived, for now. But the shadow of death lingered, patient and relentless, waiting for its final cue. Months had passed since Helena fled the theater, seeking refuge in a quiet town far from the stage and shadows. She tried to rebuild her life, working in a small cafe where the hum of everyday chatter drowned out the ghosts of the past. Yet, a cold unease clung to her like a shadow, something unseen but deeply felt. One evening, as she closed the cafe, a series of subtle coincidences began to unfold. A flicker of the lights. A distant, barely audible whisper. The faint scent of smoke drifting on the breeze. Helena paused, heart tightening. She felt it again, something watching, waiting. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared, the final act awaits. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. It's just my imagination, she whispered. But deep down, she knew better. Later, alone in her small apartment, the silence was suddenly shattered by a sharp crack. A single, stifled gasp. Then, silence, thick, suffocating, absolute. The end had come quietly, without fanfare or fury. The cruel cycle complete. Death had won, patient and merciless. And somewhere, in the stillness, the script awaited its next audience.